Right now, a critical artery for the entire global economy has been clamped shut. It sparked a crisis that could completely redefine international power. Today, we're diving deep into the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and the bold new geopolitical vision it's inspiring from French President Emmanuel Macron. The scale of this thing is just staggering. We're talking about 3,000 commercial vessels stranded. And this isn't just a traffic jam, it's a massive, massive disruption of the global supply chain, with something like 20,000 seafarers caught right in the middle of it.
And here's why this one little waterway is so incredibly important. A full 1/5 of the entire world's oil and natural gas has to pass through this narrow choke point. So when it closes, you better believe the whole global economy feels it. We're talking everything from gas prices to the cost of food on your table.
So, to really get what's happening, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. First, we'll look at the crisis itself at the choke point. Then, we'll explore the military stalemate, why no one's just blasting their way through. We'll cover the economic cost, dive into Macron's big idea for a third way, and finally, we'll look at the diplomatic endgame.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the crisis. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, a really powerful part of their military, has basically taken control of the strait. Now, they are letting ships from friendly nations through, but they're being accused of holding the world economy hostage by blocking anyone they consider a hostile nation.
And this question, this right here, is the absolute heart of the conflict. Is the Strait of Hormuz an international highway for everyone, or is it sovereign territory? Believe it or not, the answer completely depends on who you ask, and maybe more importantly, whether you think the world is at peace or at war.
So you've got this huge legal clash. On one side, you have the UN Law of the Sea. In peacetime, it's really clear. All commercial traffic gets unimpeded passage. Simple. But on the other side, Iran is arguing that, hey, we're in a state of conflict, which they say makes the strait their internal waters. And if that's the case, they claim they have every right to control who comes through to protect their own security.
Okay, Section 2, the military impasse. Now, you might be thinking, why can't the world's most powerful navies just force the strait open? Well, the reality in the water is way, way more complicated than it looks.
This quote from a security analyst just nails it. This is what we call asymmetric warfare. See, Iran doesn't have to win some big naval battle. No way. All it takes is one attack to get through. Just the possibility of a single missile hitting a supertanker is enough to create absolute panic and shut down all commercial shipping.
And just look at the specific threats they're dealing with. Iran has thousands of mines. Clearing them is slow, it's dangerous, and you're under constant threat. They've got anti-ship missiles that only need to hit their mark once. They're using advanced drones that you can't just jam. And then there are these small, super-fast boats that are a constant headache. For every countermeasure, there's a huge, potentially deadly challenge.
And this right here is the tell. Even the United States Navy is playing it safe. The Fifth Fleet, it's staying well over the horizon, way out of range of Iranian missiles. And look, that's not a sign of weakness. It's a really practical admission that trying to project force against these kinds of threats is just incredibly risky, and it might not even solve the problem.
So, this military stalemate, it creates a whole new kind of battlefield, and this one is economic. The price of passage itself is now a weapon, and the dominoes are starting to fall for companies and consumers all over the world.
I mean, just look at these numbers. It's insane. Before all this, insuring one ship for one trip through the Strait cost about $250,000. Today, that cost has shot up to as much as $10 million. This isn't just a physical blockade anymore, it's an economic one, and it's pouring fuel on global inflation as companies pass those costs down the line to us.
And Iran isn't just winging it. They're trying to make this control permanent. They're actually drafting a law to manage the strait. That includes charging a toll for passage and, get this, demanding payment in their own currency, the rial, or even in cryptocurrency. This is a clever move to force countries to deal with Iran's economy directly, maybe even bypassing international sanctions.
So all of this instability, this failure of the old ways of doing things, it's forcing some people to think way outside the box. And that brings us to French President Emmanuel Macron, who's proposing something completely new, a third way for global politics.
And here it is in his own words. This is the core idea. Macron is basically saying, look, we can't have a world where you're forced to choose between China's dominance on one hand and what he calls America's unpredictability on the other. He sees a path for strategic independence.
He's calling this a third-way coalition. Now, it's not a formal military thing like NATO.
Think of it more as a flexible group of able and willing countries. We're talking democracies that want to build a new international system based on cooperation and shared values, all while staying independent of the two big superpowers.
So what holds this group together? Well, it's a commitment to these core principles. Things like democracy, international law, respect for science, taking climate change seriously, free trade, and a fundamental belief that you use diplomacy, not just force, to solve these kinds of crises. Macron's looking at countries like South Korea, Canada, Japan, India, and Australia to be part of this.
And you can really see here how this crisis has exposed a massive split in Western policy. You had then-President Trump pushing hard for a military solution, while President Macron was arguing that, historically, those kinds of interventions have never delivered and that diplomacy is really the only path that works.
Okay, let's get to our final section, the diplomatic endgame. How in the world can this crisis be resolved? What would it possibly take to rebuild the absolutely shattered trust in the region?
So if you're a ship captain right now, you're basically looking at three bad options. You can go north, through Iranian waters, but that means you need their permission and you have to pay their toll. You can go south, through Omani waters, which is a possible alternative, but it's uncertain. Or you can try the middle routes, the traditional international channel, which is now an active conflict zone. Every single choice is loaded with political and financial risk.
But here's the real kicker, the thing that makes this so hard to solve. Trust has completely and utterly collapsed. Iran looks at its neighbors hosting foreign military bases and sees a direct threat. In turn, those same Gulf states look at Iran's actions and see it as proof of their aggression. It's this vicious cycle, and the only way to break it is with direct talks between Iran and its neighbors.
And that leaves us with this one final, really critical question. This crisis has proven that the old alliances, the old guarantees, they're failing. So if they can't provide stability anymore, what does the new global order actually look like? Is it Macron's third way, this coalition of independent nations, or is something else, something far more unpredictable, about to emerge from the chaos? That is the challenge that's going to define our time.